right, what's going on, boys? We're back here. Another week here in the basement. It's Gilps and CJ here. He's Gilps. I'm CJ. We're joined here by another special guest, absolute certified beauty here, fresh off an appearance on CTV last week. Also, our starting shortstop and number three hitter. Why don't you introduce yourself?
What's up, guys? Thanks for so much having me on. Yeah, my name is Drew. I have been a Blue Jays podcaster for the better part of 12 or 13 years. I started blogging about the team in 2008. So I've been around. I've been around, and I've seen a lot of bad teams, and I've seen the good teams as well. So excited to come on and talk about the team.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, you sure know your stuff. Definitely a great guest to have on here. Now, it was about a week ago. We were here last, and like we just lost the first two games to the Rangers and said we need to win the next two to get a split. But boy, has it ever been a roller coaster ride. We end up getting swept by the Rangers, right out of a wild card spot after having won 7 out of 9. And then, now we've won 4 in a row again, basically canceling out that 4-game sweep of the Rangers. Not to mention the Rangers getting swept by the Reds. Oh, no, we swept the Red Sox. The Rangers got swept. Who did they play? Was it the Guardians?
Yeah.
They got swept. So none of it makes sense, but I guess that's just the nature of the wild card race. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if it was true that they canceled out those 4 losses. Obviously, winning even just 2 of those games against the team that they're fighting so closely with in the wild card race would have gone a long way. But they're still in a pretty good spot, having won these 4 games. As you mentioned, when the Blue Jays were able to sweep, who are they playing? Oh my gosh,
the Red Sox.
Oh yeah, the Red Sox, of course. Yeah, they sweep the Red Sox, take the first one from the Yankees. So puts them in good shape. And I think what we're seeing, and we're going to continue to see, is the challenge with the fact that it's Seattle and Texas and even Houston that are fighting out for those other 2 wild card spots / the AL West title, which is that they can only win so many games when they're playing against each other. The Blue Jays have that working in their favor, that they have sort of their own destiny in their hands. Although that 4-game sweep against the Rangers just was so disappointing. It felt so much like this version of the Blue Jays, where for whatever reason, bad luck, bad bounces, maybe gripping the bat a little bit too tight. It's like they always manage to come up small when they need to come up big.
It's not like they were even close, right? Like the pitching that's been great all season wasn't there. The bats didn't do anything. A few of the games they were in into like the 6th inning, but they just got completely blown out. But then here we are having won 4 in a row. What are your thoughts on that, Gilps?
I think it's huge, right? Like, you live for this, you live for these situations, and it couldn't have came at a better time, right? Like, in September baseball now, it's getting to the end of the season, right? You need to play your best baseball, right?
It's obviously a hell of an exciting wild card race. It has been for the past few weeks, and it's going to continue to be. Can't wait to see how it all ends. But obviously, it's no secret that earlier in the season, we didn't expect to be in this position. We thought that we'd be making a run at the AL East. So the biggest question that I had for you then, Drew, on that note was, do you think the Blue Jays right now, obviously, like it seems like this season, every time they show us what they're capable of, and then they step back again with a losing streak like we saw against the Rangers. Do you think they're exactly as good as their record is? Or do you think the team truly is as good as we expected them to be? They're just,
I think that they have the potential to be better than they are. I think that you look at the things that they're really good at, which is at this point pitching and defense, right? They have one of the best defenses in all of baseball. They have improved the bullpen by leaps and bounds, which I think was probably one of the most disappointing things from the series against the Rangers, where the bullpen really let them down. And that's been not the way that they've performed at all for the better part of the season. They've added so much depth. They've added so much swing and miss. And really, when you kind of zoom out a little bit, you think about what happened at the end of last season and the Blue Jays and Ross Atkins, and to a lesser extent, Mark Shapiro, were like, we need to fix that. We need to make the team less predictable. We need to make the team harder to play. We need to make the team more capable of winning these tighter, playoff style games. And they've done that. They addressed the defense. They acquired one of the best outfield defenders in baseball in Dalton Varsho, as well as Kevin Kiermaier, right? Like they went way over the top in terms of addressing the defense. And then as a result, the defense has been great. But the problem is the offense has really not shown up. And, you know, you could point to, obviously everyone wants to point their fingers towards Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's obviously significantly underperformed this year, you know, despite getting hot over the last, you know, few days or so, although he did look pretty rough there on Monday night against New York. But you do see like Springer has really significantly underperformed, not been a really strong offensive player, although again, coming around. Alejandro Kirk, right? They kind of made a bit of a bet on Kirk, as well as maybe there wasn't as much interest in Kirk on the market as there would have been in a guy like Gabriel Moreno. So Kirk loses all of his power. It's probably catching way too much, even though he's a great defensive catcher, but it's like puts a lot of pressure on his bat, on his hands, being back there all the time. So seeing him, you know, have very little power this year, which is a huge issue because if you can't hit the ball over the fence, you can't really run, right? He's one of the worst base runners in baseball. So all these things start to combine with the fact that they don't have the same kind of offensive depth that they had, you know, even last year, where there's so much pressure in baseball now to hit the home run. You got to hit the ball over the fence, right? Pitching is so good, you can't expect to string 3 and then 4 hits together in a row. It's just not realistic with the quality of the stuff of the players who are on the mound for every single team. Even the bad teams have guys with ridiculous stuff. They're throwing so hard. They're throwing breaking balls in like every single count. So offensively, they've really been disappointing. I think that that blame is easy to shift around across the team, but I think that we maybe are. It almost reminds me of the 2015 versus 2016 Blue Jays. The 2016 Blue Jays were amazing pitching defense team, but the offense really wasn't there. Even the lineup is a lot longer, even than this one is right now. So they can pitch really well, they can defend, but in a game like in that series against Texas, where if you hit the ball over the fence against them, right, you expose the kind of weak underbelly of any team. No one can defend home runs. When you're asking the Blue Jays offense in its current form to come back against these big, you know, deficits, they're not really built for that, and it's sort of exposed them. So I think that, you know, when Bichette is hitting well, when Vlad is healthy and really driving the ball like we've seen, when George Springer is getting on base and hitting the ball over the fence, when Matt Chapman is doing what he's done, which, you know, it's easy to focus on how bad he's been for the last however many months, but if you kind of look at his numbers for the whole season, they're almost the same as last year. He can make the contributions he can make. Kevin Biggio is really chipping in a really timely manner right now. Obviously, they're missing Danny Jansen, but that happens all the time. So the offense is just really not quite what maybe we expected it to be, what the front office expected it to be. And I think that's kind of cost them a little bit this year, on top of all the crazy stuff that's happened with like the bases loaded and the runners in scoring position. They've just had one of the worst situational hitting seasons in recent memory. If it wasn't for how bad the Padres have been in the National League, I think there'd be a lot more attention on like just how bad the Blue Jays have screwed up with runners in scoring position with the bases loaded. And it was kind of the story of the season. But right now they're in a position where if they can kind of, you know, pull this one out of the fire a little bit, a lot of that stuff will probably get overlooked until it comes time when the front office need to sort of look and reassess about next season. There's definitely a hole in terms of they need to have a little bit more offensive production from players who they can count on to be on the field and players they can count on to hit home runs at the end of the day.
Yeah, so with that said, Drew, I'm just going to ask you this question. Is there one player that's stood out to you the most from the beginning of the season until now?
I mean, I think Yusei Kikuchi is easy to, you know, scoff at. You know, he's the 5th starter, and he's just pitched so well. I mean, he's, you know, he in a way is kind of like Kevin Biggio in my mind, where I really think that Kevin Biggio is being utilized perfectly right now. He's good at the things that he's good at, and they're not asking him to do more than that. Even though they had him hitting cleanup last night, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. But Kikuchi is a guy that's like, he's emblematic of everything that they've done, where he benefits from the great defense. He benefits from having really smart people talking to him about how he can be the best version of himself. That contract does not look crazy at all now. There's a lot of pressure on him. Obviously, last year he came in really late into camp, and then there were a lot of changes they were trying to make. And that's something that has changed in baseball over the last few years. You can read a lot about this, about how it used to be like, you come in the spring and you do all your tinkering, you work on your new pitches, and then you just sort of go on your way. Well, now it's more of like an ongoing process. And I think we're finally seeing a lot of that stuff come to roost with Kikuchi, where you don't have, the health obviously, but you don't have these blow up starts, right? Which
Right.
when Manoah was on the mound, but like you don't have these blow up starts. You're not putting all that extra pressure on the bullpen, because even if he is, Kikuchi's a 5 and dive guy now, right? Like no one's at the Blue Jays are smart. They're not going to ask him to go through the order a third time. That would be crazy. He's going to get hammered, but he's able to not just trust his fastball, but I think if you saw on Monday night against the Yankees, it wasn't just like that he was throwing his fastball for strikes. They were good strikes, right? He's really locating it at the bottom of the zone. He's left-handed. He's throwing 95, 96, 97. Like no one's doing anything with that down there. So he's been able to really like hone in and get that command, as well as the control, where sometimes it didn't look like he had any idea where he's going. So to me, he's like a microcosm of what they've done well this season, and how their kind of player development success. That's what player development, I think, success looks like. Is they made a bet on a guy that on paper was a lot of money, even though like baseball money, it's not that much. But now they're seeing the benefit of that. And even if Kikuchi doesn't get a start, say the Blue Jays win the first round and they're into a division series, Kikuchi's not going to get a start, right? They're not going to start him over any of the other guys in there. But there's no way you get there without him, and there's no way the Blue Jays get where they are right now without a guy like you say, Kikuchi, which the risk of overstating his contribution, but it's so valuable to have a good fifth starter.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, on that note, the other thing I wanted to ask you about this, which, I mean, it's kind of like you said, like the offense, a lot of our hitters just are underperforming this year, but knowing, how deep our pitching is compared to last year, and how far that can take you in the playoffs, like our best guy against their best guy the first game, and then the next game, if the guys you keep rolling out are all just as good. Same goes for the bullpen. We put out these guys today, while the pitchers that are going tomorrow are just as good. So yeah, like knowing how far pitching depth can take you in the playoffs, even though we're going to end up with a similar record to last year, do you think this team is better set up for success in the playoffs, assuming that we get in?
I think that it is. I don't think you can make much of an argument against that. For all the reasons that you listed, I very much agree. But like, the ability to go and catch the baseball, the ability to not give extra outs to good teams that you can't get away with in the playoffs. Because you think about, what, even if it's the Astros lineup, you think about even the Orioles. You curse the Orioles, but like, if you make an error or a ball falls in because you've got, bless him, but Lourdes Gurriel Jr. playing in left field, like he's like a statue, right? He doesn't get good jumps. He doesn't have good range. He can throw you out if you try to stretch him into a double. But if a ball that should be caught doesn't get caught, and now you turn the lineup over and you're facing the Orioles, and now it's like Gunnar Henderson, what's his name, Rutschman, like their lineup, especially at the top, is so deep, and in the playoffs, it's like there's a home run waiting to happen. Like you have to treat the batter's box like a scoring position when you're playing a good team, because all these guys get home runs. Even Texas, right? Texas is a mess a lot of the time, but like their lineup is stacked. And would you rather have set yourself up where you can get Simeon and Seager, your best relievers, going against them with nobody on? Obviously. So I think that the depth of the bullpen, where you can bring in a guy with swing and miss, you can bring in a guy who is not afraid, not overwhelmed by the moment. You have enough good pitchers back there that you can really put them, as I'll say, put them in the position to succeed. Okay, we got Trevor Richards coming up. We want to save Tim Mays, our real lefty, so we'll use Trevor Richards as our fake lefty against like the 6, 7, 8 hitters. 2 of them are left-handed. Okay, well, Richards is going to throw his changeup like 9 times in a row, and those 3 guys are going to strike out. But when the tough lefty comes up, when you got to get Yordan Alvarez out, well, then you can go to a guy like Mays. So they are set up. The concern I have is the one that we just discussed, which is if they fall behind, do they have the offense to come back? Right? Can you count on the Blue Jays offense to score 4 if they go down 3 in the first couple innings? Because it's still baseball, right? Kevin Gossman, we've seen him for 2 years be one of the best pitchers in baseball, but like, a weird squib single that goes against the shift or finds a hole, something gets looped over the second baseman's head, then a guy hits a 3-run home run because he throws a splitter and it could just be sitting there. Well, now you're down 3. Okay, well, can you count on the Blue Jays offense to get back? As Dan said on Monday night, with the Blue Jays, they pushed over the 7th run of the game, and it was like the first time they scored more than 6 runs in 2.5 weeks.
Right.
And they're winning these games. That's the thing. They're winning these games,
Yeah.
but that's not the team. It's not the team that we remember from 2021.
Yeah, it really isn't.
With anybody.
Yeah, like it's been the story of the whole season. Like they fall behind, the offense just goes completely silent. When you need them most, and then yeah, it's just not what we're used to. Like we're even in like 2019 when the Blue Jays lost 96 games, we were still a huge home run hitting team. I'm just used to like my entire life as a Blue Jays fan always being a big home run team. And this year, for whatever reason, it just hasn't been the case. Obviously, Varsho, we expected to hit about 25. Same with Chapman. We expected Guerrero to be over 30. It just hasn't been the case. But at the same time, and missing a guy like Teoscar is huge. But when we talk about the pitching we have and the defense, it's like, okay, well, I don't know. Maybe I'd rather take the pitching and the defense in a way, knowing how important that is. And that's something like 2021 when they missed the playoffs by one game. Like that offense had so much potential. And there were so many games where like Tyler Chatwood would blow the lead or something in May. And just any one of those games could have changed their fate. Whereas this year we haven't had that problem. And good to see actually as well last night talking about the bullpen. It's no secret that for the first like week or two of September, they hadn't really been the same for the most part. Like our bullpen was kind of struggling compared to what they've done all season.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say, big to see last night, Richards and Garcia both put up scoreless innings. Obviously, Richards has been struggling since he came back from his injury. But now he comes out there and that's just one inning. But if he's back, if he's trustworthy again, then that's huge in terms of the depth and everything you mentioned about him. Now that being said, obviously we talked about Guerrero a little bit. The next question I had for you, knowing that he is swinging the bat well lately, and he seems to be on a bit of a roll right now, minus last night's game. Is there anything like mechanically that you've noticed about his swing in the past couple weeks that's perhaps changed compared to what he was doing before that?
Mechanically, it's tough. I saw Joe Siddall, I think it was on Twitter, did a decent breakdown of like some of the things that he saw. And Joe Siddall is much more qualified to make those kind of assessments than I am. I'm more of like a read the StatCast page kind of guy. But and that's the troubling thing about him, right? Is that you look at his StatCast and you look at how hard he's hitting the ball and how his launch angle has increased, and that there are different reasons for that. And I am among of the camp where I think that he's got some more like nagging kind of injuries than he kind of lets on. And I think that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is the kind of guy who he has that grew up in the clubhouse sort of mentality where it's like you play every day, right? You play no matter what. And he's done that in his big league career. What has he missed? Probably 3 games in the last 2 years.
Something like that.
Right? The one I always remember the one day in 2021 where they had to tape him to the bench. He was out off that day, and he just couldn't stop. And there's a lot of value in that, but it's also like a really deep like big league baseball culture thing, right? One of the best abilities is availability, and so Vlad keeps going out there, and I saw here Tuesday that he's still in the lineup even though he looked like not great running the bases, and everything builds up from there. Where the thing I think, I guess, when it comes back to this is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a victim of his own success in a way sometimes, because he does hit the ball so hard, because he has such incredible hand-eye coordination, such incredible barrel control. He hits the ball so hard all the time that he thinks he can hit everything hard, and it makes him maybe he doesn't strike out a lot, and his walk rate is like kind of above average, but really he swings at pitches that he should probably take to be a bit more conservative and like be more selective in the strike zone. That's the thing you guys have probably heard me say more than once. He needs to be more selective in the strike zone, really wait for pitches he can drive, and then he can get into more defense mode because he can defend. He can defend the strike zone. He can put balls in play that other guys would miss. And I think that part of that is that same thing where even though he's hurt, he can still hit the ball hard. Even though he's hurt, I'm sure he goes out there and his BP looks the same every single day. So he's kind of like holding himself back a little bit, where maybe a little bit more rest, maybe like a bit of treatment on his wrist or his knee. They call them 2 things that have sort of been nagging him and sort of quietly recurring throughout the whole season. I think that's it. I mean, the big league season is really, really long. And if you play 150, 160 games, like very few players do, right? But Vlad is one of them. it's going to beat you down, especially when you're facing such, just the level of pitching that those guys see right now is so crazy. So to me, it's that. Again, I think all the pieces are there. You don't look under the hood or look at where the little red circles are on StatCast and think like, this is a guy who's cooked. There's nothing, this is a guy who needs to make a big shift. I think he's made those adjustments over his career. It's just that thing that this year, a bad combination of like bad luck, maybe a few little nagging injuries. The one thing that makes me come back to the injuries thing is if you don't go to his StatCast page, you look up some of his numbers and you see that the average distance of his fly ball is down like 8 or 12 feet or something, which to me is a red flag in terms of like, why is he just not have the same level of pop? Why is the ball not flying as far? And is that because he's hurt? What is that? So that's the only thing. I think that his approach has gotten a lot better. I think the big thing with Vlad is like don't miss those pitches, right? And which sometimes when he's going really bad, it's like, I'm sure we're all the same. We're watching and you see somebody kind of spin a slider that's kind of sitting on the inside half, and then you get all like, oh, here it goes, and then he misses it or he fouls it back, and you're like, dude, like, do you know who you are? Like, you are Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That's your pitch to hammer, man.
Seriously. But
he doesn't, and like it comes back to the thing, and you talked about it, CJ, off the top, like when you think back to even 2019, 2020, 2021, where the Blue Jays were like a rally waiting to happen. And the thing that I remember is in 2018, when Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hit the walk-off home run in a game in Montreal. It was an exhibition game.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that.
Right at the end of spring training. An amazing moment. It was so great. But in my mind, it kind of ruined him forever, because now I expect like the spectacular from him every single time. And it's been 4 full seasons, and I still, well, other than the COVID season, but I can't shake it, because everything about him looks like it's like the next pitch is leaving the yard. It's going to leave the universe, and it just hasn't quite been there this year. And I feel like there's probably nobody who's more frustrated than him. The Blue Jays, I'm sure, as a team, are like kind of the front office are like pulling their hair out, trying to understand and trying to figure out what is it that how can we work with him to get the best out of him. They're not quite there yet, but it's a stupid cliche to say, but like the Blue Jays as a team are only as good as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is, because he is in the middle of the lineup, because he plays first base, because he plays DH, because he's the most famous guy on the team.
Face of the franchise.
His offensive profile is so perfect that if he's going well, everything else works.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Like, it all comes down to that. Like, I've been telling people, like, people are starting to question, like, oh, maybe he's just not as good of a player as we thought he was. Our expectations of him are too high, which that's fair. Like, our expectations of him are ridiculous. But at the same time, the season he had in 2021, like, that was a fantastic season. I think people who are maybe just casual fans don't realize, like, just how incredible that was. Hitting 311, 48 home runs, and 111 RBIs, 400 on base percentage. Like, you can't put up those kinds of numbers by mistake. So the potential for him is there. And you know what? Like, it all comes down to, if he is getting hot now at the right time, just heading into playoffs, he really can take this team a long way if he gets back to that level of production. So, on that note, did you have anything else you wanted to add there, Gilps?
Yeah, no, I think, my thing with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is I think those expectations, he earned them, right? He earned them when he was 18 years old and destroying A-ball. He earned them when he was 19 years old and destroying AA. Like, not just looking the part and not just being like, oh, he's hit a few home runs. Like, he was 18. He's playing in high A. He's 5 years younger than the average player in the league, and he's got a 945 OPS at 18 years old. Then he's 20 and he's crushing AAA. Right? Like, and all of this happened when he was one of the most expensive amateur signings that the Blue Jays have ever made, especially since they put in like the kind of new rules. Like, he earned these expectations, and then he fulfilled them in 2021. Now, the thing that's always important to remember is, like, just because you have that season, that's not the new baseline, right? That's not like where every season is going to start, but all the pieces are there, and you can see the work that he had to put in, sort of figure things out a little bit, and you can see everything about him that makes him such an important player is the part that's going to make what the Blue Jays have to decide in the next 2 years is going to be really, really difficult because, okay, are we going to invest in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for long term? Are we going to sign him to, a very lucrative contract? In terms of his arbitration, he's already earned a lot of money, right? He's going to be making a lot of money in the next 2 years, even if he doesn't play another game this year and only plays 50 games next year. He still set himself up for a significant arbitration payday in his last year before his free agency. It's like, can you let him walk? Like, this is a guy who's like more than on his way to becoming a franchise icon. He's also the kind of guy that you can see it like everybody else, that if he goes and signs somewhere else, and then there's another one of those seasons, there's another 1,000 OPS, 45 home run seasons, just like right there under the surface. So he's such a perplexing player. And if they can, again, I think it's so important for the team, the player, and whoever the players got around him to work together to like find. Blue Jays have a really specific way that they do things, and they have a certain expectation of their players. So if they can just continue to work with Vlad and get him on the same page and get him to be back where he was, it just means everything. It means everything for the team this year. Like you said, if he starts getting hot, if he's healthy enough that he can really just have those plate appearances where he's seeing everything, where he's spinning on that slider that's 3 inches outside and driving the ball to right field. He can take them straight into the World Series. That's not hyperbole, right? This kind of team with a guy like that, he can do what Bryce Harper did last year for the Phillies without even the bat of an eye. But it's a lot to ask, but it doesn't mean we can't hope and expect it, because there's nobody on the team, even Bo Bichette's got the talent to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Anyway, did you have any other questions for him?
I think the one I asked him was really the main one I wanted to focus on, so I'm good on that end.
Yeah, I know I've been going a while here, but I think one more thing I wanted to mention. I mean, we talked about BGO and how he's swinging the bat very well right now. And it's timely because, I mean, Witt, who was hitting close to 300 or 290 all season, has actually been ice cold since the last week in August. And BGO is a very similar player to him in terms of primarily a second baseman, but offers a lot of versatility as well with the right field and left field. BGO, being the lefty option. But anyway, I know earlier today you were sharing some thoughts about Cavan BGO, and I know you're not a huge fan of him. He's a weird player. Like, obviously, earlier this year, we didn't even know, does he have a future with this team? Does he have a role with us? And now he's playing like the BGO that we thought was on the same level as Vlad and Bo almost. So, why don't you tell us your thoughts about him?
Look, I said this before, and it's almost tragic that this version of BGO has shown up now, because I think that this version of Cavan BGO was perfect for the 2022 or even 2021 Blue Jays. Right, he's a really good base runner when that was something they were not good at doing. He had a lot of versatility when that's something that they didn't have. He was left-handed when that was something that they didn't have. He's good at a few things, and right now he looks good at the plate. They're, as I said, kind of at the top. They're really utilizing him well. They don't put him in positions where he's not going to succeed. They're not going to put him in there. I don't know if the Jays are facing Carlos Rodon in this series, but like a hard-throwing lefty is like the worst thing you could do for Cavan BGO. So you give him a break. You let him play when he's got a really good matchup. Him kind of like with Merrifield, where you don't want to put too much, you don't want to overemphasize the kind of StatCast stuff and exit velocity a lot. I know that turns a lot of people off when they read it, but like that stuff comes for you eventually. And I think that's what we're seeing with Whit Merrifield, right? If you don't hit the ball super hard, if you're kind of in the laggard in terms of like your exit velocities and your launch angles and your expected numbers, the ball will stop finding holes and will start finding gloves. They'll move guys around to find it. The easiest place to hit it is over the fence. And BGO has just been that guy who has such a great, control of the strike zone, but then teams sort of figured it out that like, okay, well then just only throw him strikes and like let him hurt you. And he hadn't, but now he looks a lot better. His swing is looking really short. He's looking right to the ball. Like one of the homies in the chat was saying that he really likes his approach right now. And there's a lot to like. He's a really useful player. I think, speaking of expectations, I think Cavan BGO's expectations were way too high when he was coming in based on the kind of player that he is. But this is when he can be really at his best. I think he works a little bit better on like an even better offensive team than the 2023 Blue Jays. But it's really, I had called myself a BGO hater, and that's kind of the role that I play online. And it's not necessarily true, because I love watching him run the bases. He's a really, really nice base runner. He's really aggressive, a lot like Kiermaier, right? he makes the right decision every single time. And he's fast. He's not the fastest guy, but like, you know, for the record, I also love watching Vladimir Guerrero Jr. run the bases because he runs the bases like a maniac, and that is like my favorite thing. And you two could hopefully see a little bit of that in me because I try to like bring that, even though I'm even slower than Vlad. But
you keep your helmet on at least.
My helmet on. Poor guy is all falling all over him on Monday. But yeah, a guy like Biggio is a really nice thing to have on a good team. I just want to make sure that I hope that fans and the team alike don't start to like over rely on him. Like again, having him clean up seems like a little bit of a push. Like it's a little bit of a stretch. Like just let him hit at the bottom of you. I think, and in a lot of ways, like you've seen with Kiermaier here this year, he's a great number 9 hitter.
Yeah, for
he can
sure.
get on. He can run the bases. He can make things happen when the big guys come up and start hitting the ball to the outs, and he's going to score from first on the double. You know, which you're going to get from a guy like Biggio and ideally from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Springer as well. So he's a really good player. He's a really nice luxury to have. I just don't think that anybody should delude themselves into thinking that he's like a real core piece. He's a really nice player who he's going to get to free agency now, right? Into the same time as Vlad and everybody. And that's a huge success. Like most players don't get there. He's the kind of player who you could see having like a 10-year career, right? Less than 10% of big leaguers make it to 10 years in the majors. And you can see Biggio doing that because he's a valuable player, which would be nothing short of an incredible accomplishment for a guy who doesn't really have a position and doesn't have a ton of power. So good for him. And when he's going well, it can really pick up the slack. So it couldn't time his little hot streak that he always gets one a year. Couldn't have timed it better.
Yeah, and you know what? At the end of the day, like you talk about not wanting to over rely on him. Like it's good we're relying on him right now, but different guys get hot at different times. Obviously, he gets hot and kind of takes the torch from Witt, being the guy playing second base, and of course Biggio, you know, did a great job playing third base as well there and playing the outfield as well. But yeah, and then like again, you look at a guy like David Schneider, who's been relying on him a lot. He's cooled off, but I mean, he's been hitting the ball very well lately. I think it's just a matter of regression to the mean in a sense. But yeah, I like what you said about having Biggio down at the bottom of the lineup. It's definitely a good spot for him, just like Kiermaier. And funny enough, you had me hitting 9th a couple of games in a row for our team, and that's the exact same approach that I tried to take.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Hitting line drives, that's what it's all about in our league.
For sure.
You got to hit over the fence. That's which reminds me of the one guy I really like to see come back, and I think can make a big impact as he's done all year, Brandon Belt. That's just like that lefty bat, great at bats, hit for power. They could really benefit from having him around again soon.
Add on that with Brandon Belt being in the lineup and around the guys, that veteran guy to lean on too, right? Like goes a long way for the young guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously Belt, just like Biggio, has a great eye for the plate, and it's like he's not necessarily hitting all the home runs that we expected him to, but he's been getting on base when you need him to, and even at a time where like our offense was really struggling, he was kind of just being steady Brandon Belt there. So yeah, for sure. I hope that he's able to come back soon. I know it was a bit of a blow seeing him go out.
Brandon Belt 6th on the team in home runs in a sick way.
Wow, yeah.
That's not bad. You take that from a part-time player, a guy who's hurt all the time because he's old as hell. It happens.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, anyway, with that being said, I mean, obviously this team has the potential. We know what they're capable of. So at the end of the day, it just comes down to execution and seeing, you know, in the next couple of weeks, once we know kind of where we'll be. Obviously, I'm sure you probably agree that the 3rd wild card spot would actually be better than the 2nd, but be careful what you wish for. Don't try to lose and get the 3rd spot and then end up missing altogether. So
yeah, all I can say is get the popcorn ready.
Yeah.
Just get in. Just get in, right? Even doesn't matter if you're playing home, playing on the road, just get in. Crazy stuff can happen.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, I think on that note, it wraps things up for this week. We appreciate you coming on here and joining us and the insights and everything. Anything else you wanted to add there?
No, I'm good, but thanks again, Drew. Really appreciate it, man.
It's been my pleasure, gentlemen. I'll see you on the field on Sunday.
Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. Next time.